Hello and welcome to the Eat, Sleep, Arsenal Repeat podcast on the Gooner Talk for episode 3 of our brand new podcast. Of course, hopefully you've been joining us for the last couple of weeks. This is more of a healthy, fitty look at Arsenal and the world of sport as well in more general terms too. And I'm very happy as always to be joined by my fantastic guest. Sophie, how you doing? You good? You well?
Doing very well. I have a story to tell real quick, but I'll do it
Go
after we've introduced.
Okay. Yes, we'll do it that way around. Lovely stuff. No, good to have on the show as always. Make sure if you aren't subscribed to the Highbury Squad that you go and do that. It's been some fantastic content going out there recently. And of course, we're joined as always by Dr. Raj. How you doing, mate? You good? You well?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Arsenal are finally back. Glad to see Messi win a World Cup, but glad we're through that. So here we go, back to the real thing.
Indeed. Doc is joining us live from his local cafe, of which there are other cafes available, so I won't give them the name. But
rubbing in the
yes.
weather over here.
Indeed, yes. So if you hear any background noise, that is the reason as to why. But we appreciate him joining us on site for today's podcast. Owen is not here, and Owen won't be around for a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, he's been called away with work to work some heavy shifts, unfortunately, over what is a very busy Christmas period. And for his job, which I won't talk about because, he hasn't given me the green light to say what he does, but he does a lot of work around things that people need for Christmas in their homes. That's very broad, I know, and your imagination could run wild, but his services are very much needed at this time of year. And he's unfortunately going to have to be working over the next few weeks when we would be recording. So, Owen, we hopefully you can keep up all your fitness stuff, and we'll catch up after you're back as well. Sophie, tell us your story.
So real quick, before we came live on air, my partner was coming back from urgent care. There's this horrible flu going around in the States. I don't know what it's like in the UK. It's awful right now.
I've been ill. Yeah. Everyone's been ill.
Yeah. Just stay indoors. So on the way back, because she's not feeling well, she's going to go and get some ice from a, local place. They do great crushed ice. And she said, "Do you want anything?" And I haven't eaten all day, and I'm so starving. And I thought, yeah, gosh, I do. So I said to her, how about some tater tots? So I wanted to be honest and tell you guys and the listeners that just before we came on air, I'm trying, right? I'm trying to retrain my brain to how it used to be. I got the tater tots. She brought them home. I had like 5 and felt so guilty, like an overwhelming amount of guilt, especially knowing I was coming on air to talk about stuff. And I just wanted to share that with everyone because it is so hard. Convenience is a killer. It really is. And I went to the store earlier in the morning, Tom, and I bought fresh bread. I bought a little turkey. I bought some cucumber, some tomatoes. I was going to make a salad. I got some feta cheese and olives, and that happened.
Yeah. I like this opening to the show where maybe we reveal a guilty secret that we've kept. Raj, do you want to admit to anything bad that you may have had to indulge in this week?
A good amount of wine last night, but it was quite good. So what's wrong with that, man? Here and there, it's okay.
Yeah,
but
no,
I think
fair.
One note on her point, that's why food prep is so important. If you can prepare your meals beforehand, so that when you're hungry, it's not like there's that extra threshold, extra step, which is gonna be like, hey, you know what? Screw it, I'll have these tater tots or whatever it is, right? And so if the food's already ready to go, and you can just whatever it is, put it in the microwave or whatever it is, that makes it a lot easier to stick to those habits.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like my guilty admission is that my mile a day has obviously stopped because we've had the snow here in the UK, and that lasted so long, so incredible, like ridiculous to the point because the temperature, it snowed one day, and then the temperature stayed below 0 or around 0 for the following week. So the snow just didn't leave, like it was just everywhere, and it was frozen. So you can't go running, you can't do anything. There's no motivation because it's getting close to Christmas, and when you get close to Christmas, all you want to do is just, put candles, like scented candles is the thing at the moment in the house. So you get all the smells of just wanting to sit under a blanket and watch a film. That's the feeling right now. And so I'm going to talk about our Strava club a little bit later, but you'll notice that there hasn't been a mile recorded since the 6th of December, I think, which is awful considering the fact that, you know, we've started this show all about health and stuff. But, you know, I want this to be realistic. And, you know, realistically, you do fall out of routines, and it's about working back to get into them. I think what's going to be great about this is that we're going to, our 4th or 5th or 6th show will be crossing over into the new year, which, of course, New Year's resolutions come around, and we can all start with a fresh leaf and move forwards. But yes, I'll talk about that Strava situation at the end of today's podcast. Let's get into things with Arsenal. Arsenal endured a difficult defeat this weekend, Sophie, against Juventus. Did you manage to catch this one? I know it was a struggle to see the Milan game.
Yeah, I didn't while it was on, but I did catch it afterwards, kind of heading into a little bit of research for the weekend and stuff. It's one of those games. I asked Super Kev about the game on Monday, and I said, as a player, does a game like this matter to you if you lose? And he said it's a little bit of a weird one because of the timing. You know, in a preseason in the summer, they probably just brush it off and start focusing on the league starting. He said, but because they're top of the league, 5 points clear, wanting to go into the second half of the campaign, the final act, feeling confident, it just felt like a little bit of a weird, not only result based on the performance, but also maybe for this Arsenal team at this time coming back, getting something out of the game would have been good. And losing in that fashion, kind of ugly, really, when you think about the 2 goals that Juventus scored. Tom, you were there. It just all felt weird when I watched the game back.
Yeah, it was. I was sitting next to Kyra, of course, who you had on your show, you know, on Monday, and I was saying
Hot
to him
chocolate?
after,
You guys have hot chocolate? Hot chocolate?
he does. I'm not a hot chocolate drinker. I'm a tea drinker. So, you know, I have my tea, and he has his hot chocolate with a fountain of marshmallows and cream. No, he doesn't really have that. He just has his hot chocolate. But yeah, I was just said to him at half time, like, I've never seen us so dominant, so that the other team were literally suffocated to nothing. Like, they had nothing. And then just before half time, we score an own goal. And then it's like a reflection of exactly the same thing happened in the second half, where we're dominating again. They barely have a chance, and then they score. Well, we score another own goal, and it's 2-0. I mean, Raj, are you worried about this result? I mean, there's rumours that we might be playing a behind closed door friendly on Wednesday when this podcast will be going out. Are you worried that this kind of interruption of the momentum that we built off of Lyon and Milan will affect how we enter that West Ham game, or do you think we'll be able to compartmentalise it?
I'm not really worried about it. It was a weird game, like you said. Completely control the game. I mean, like 80+% possession. The press was excellent. The process was great. I mean, 2 own goals. It's just one of those weird games, right? So you can't put too much stock into it. They happen. It's football. It happens, right? Move on. So I don't really care too much about it. So I don't think. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Doc, I think the biggest concern is beyond the 11. Once again, it shows that we've got problems.
In where particularly would you say?
Well,
striker being the main area, I guess.
Main area. And, you know, there were some of our World Cup players that played, but, you know, an in-form, in-rhythm, game fit Premier League Arsenal this season, we're a lot better than, I think Saliba missing is massive. I keep saying this. Everyone keeps saying Thomas Partey. And yes, of course, he's so important. But Saliba, that drop-off is massive. If it's not Ben White coming in for him and it's Rob Holding, that is beyond a massive drop-off.
Yeah, Raj, what do you think?
No, I agree. I mean, I don't think it's any secret that the team's depth is an issue, right? So especially when it comes to those key positions in the spine. So a lot of this is just, can you get by with and not have players get injured, right? That's why the Jesus injury was so big. At least, though, you have Nketiah there who might be able to fill in, right? So, like, the Saliba to Holding drop-off is massive, of course. If Tomiyasu is not fit to play like that. And so, Partey drop-off is massive, completely changes the whole game plan. Because I think we've seen with Lokanga, he's far more comfortable as an 8 thus far. Playing a lone 6 for anyone is very, very difficult, especially for a player who still kind of catches rhythm in his stride. But yeah, depth is certainly an issue. I think left back the depth there has been really, really good. I think that's part of why they've been so conservative with Zinchenko and not trying to rush him. And I think Saliba being at right center back, allowing Ben White to play right back, is why they're not rushing Tomiyasu as well, right? So there's a knock-on effect, positive and negative, of having good depth at key positions.
Yeah, depth is always going to be the question mark around a squad that has been, over the course of 3 years, really overhauled from, ironically, we're recording this on the day that it's Arteta's 3rd-year anniversary at the club. And the big factor has been obviously that the first 11 that Arteta chose, there's 2 players that exist from that starting 11 compared to the starting 11s that we perceive to be our best team, and that's Saka and Xhaka that are still there. And beyond that, we've spent over £250 million in 3 years overhauling the squad to change it into a team that's now sitting 5 points clear at the top of the table. But £250 million, isn't actually, when you think about the context of a team, like a whole team being changed, and you think of the Cities and the Chelseas and Uniteds of this world, that's not a lot of money. £250 million for a whole team. When you think about it that way,
is that the right number, Tom?
Yeah.
If you go, I thought it was north of 3.
If you go, I'm doing this roughly. So let's say Ramsdale's 30, White's 50, so that's 80. Then you've got, this is obviously the money spent whilst Arteta's here. So Saliba, for instance, was brought in before Arteta. So you
Right.
say Saliba's been integrated. So 80 with Ramsdale and White, 30 on, 25, 30 on Gabriel. See, I didn't include Tommy because Tommy's not actually in the starting 11 right now. That's kind of one of the other things about this.
Oh, that's cheeky.
It is cheeky, but it's true. So Gabriel 25, so that takes to 105. Zinchenko 30, so it's 135. Then you go to Thomas Partey at 45 million, so that's 150. Then you're going to Ødegaard at 180. Then you've got Jesus 225. And that's it. I guess you include Tomiyasu, then you get to the your
Tomiyasu, Sambi, Nuno. You can go. You can go to the Cedric and Runnissons and
Mari. Yeah.
Mari.
But if you look at that starting 11, if you look at that team, that starting 11 that we've built, that's been done with under less than 250,000.
It's good value for money in modern sports.
Yeah. And Tavares, 7 million quid, we're going to sell him for more than we bought him. Lokonga, 15 million quid, we'd probably get even, or if not slightly more than what we bought him for. I think Mari's got an obligation purchase if Monza stay up at around 6-7 million, which is about what we paid for him, slightly less. But, considering he's a player that, gets no minutes, and we've seen players terminate their deals in that kind of position, we're getting some money back off of that. We might actually make a profit on Cedric if these links to Fulham are true. So that might also happen. Raj, it sounds good on paper.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it sounds quite reasonable. I think it's even better when you realize. Sorry for the Starbucks background, but 2 of the
he's revealed his location. Other coffee shops are available.
Self-docs. 2 of the 3 years, the team had no leverage in transfers. I think that first appeared this last summer. Got Jesus and Zinchenko right on good deals, so they wanted it to come. But prior to that, a lot of the transfer negotiations were with an arsenal that other teams knew needed players, right? And therefore, you're able to boost your valuations, so we know they have some desperation. So I think all things considered, the valuations have been quite good. And I think the other thing we saw this past summer is that the team isn't willing to go too crazy on their valuations, like Rafinha, for example, right? Like if they came with a heavy offer, they maybe could have got him, but they're being disciplined with the spending and they have a process. And I think that really sums up the rebuilding.
Absolutely. And it is across the 3 years. It's not just the squad. The connection with the fans and the club is nearly entirely repaired. I think throughout the unity in the fan base is something I've never seen really in kind of my modern era of watching Arsenal. The principles, the standards, the expectation, Edu in the summer, this is before we were even looking like title challengers. This is in the summer before the season started. the questions Edu was being asked about the signings made was all about the Champions League qualification. He said, to be honest, I'm not focused on Champions League qualification. I'm focused on more than that. We're focused on taking Arsenal to that next level. So this clearly was in the minds. I remember El Neni spoke after the Nuremberg friendly where he said, I think we'll challenge for the title this season. So this has clearly been in the minds of the players, this objective to get where we want to go. And I think it's great that we've gone off on a tangent from a defeat against Juventus to talking about, our ambitions of winning a title in Arteta's 3 years. And it shows you that these bad results can happen. They will happen. And unfortunately, you can't win every game, but it's how you respond to it. And the club have responded initially to this friendly defeat by organising one behind closed doors, which is key to get a response to. And then we'll go into this game against West Ham on Boxing Day. I suppose it's the right time to talk about that because we are talking about that now, Sophie. How are you feeling ahead of the game and the return of the Premier League? It does feel like, if you're addicted to something, that we've got that hit of what we've been craving for so long back in our lives. And I think it comes at a good time as well.
Where is the intravenous drip? I mean, just inject everything. It's so funny. People keep saying this. Is there too much football? No, there really isn't too much football. And it's just become so part of our makeup. Like, I've really had a hard time the last month. Yeah, we talk the truth on Eat, Sleep, Arsenal, Repeat. It's you miss something from your life. It's like when you're not around your family, there's something missing. I live far away from my family and around the holidays, and yeah, you miss them, but there's just, football is part of our DNA. There are people we only see when we go to the football. That's it. There are people we hang out with only football related. So it's such a massive part of our lives, and I've really missed it. And it's a different experience, going from a European Championship or a Copa America or a Gold Cup to the World Cup and then club football, because that's part of your everyday makeup. It's not every 4 years, it's every year. So I can't wait. And I'm really looking forward to it, Tom. Really excited. Boxing Day is such a massive day. Growing up in England, like having the football over the holidays when every other league is on holiday. I just thought and loved growing up. I don't like the idea of a winter break, but I do, considering now there's going to be more football, or there is more football. To me, it didn't make sense previously, like when I was growing up, because there just wasn't as much football. But now I totally get it. Give the players a winter break. They deserve it. They've earned it. We all get a vacation. They deserve one too. So I can't wait.
Yeah.
I think our players can't wait either. I hope they're happy to be home, together, raring to go, Tom.
Yeah, I think that they are. And I think that the messaging we saw from the players and from Arteta is that they have come back, very committed, and they're ready and they're raring to go. I think the Juventus defeat, if anything, will be a bit of a kick up the backside, and they'll be like, well, that was crap. Like we can't allow that to happen, in the league, and we need to make sure that we respond to it. Raj, how are you feeling ahead of the Premier League's return and West Ham in particular?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I'll say, I think the first 2 weeks, I enjoyed the stress break. But then after that, I was like, all right, let's get back to it. And that's why I think like a winter break for 2 weeks is okay, right? And so, but other than that, definitely ready to go, get back to it, get back in the rhythm of the game. Like I enjoyed the World Cup, but I didn't really, I'm not as invested. So, which is good or bad and good. You can kind of watch games and enjoy them more. But there's nothing quite like, locking myself in a room to watch by myself and people wondering why I'm yelling and stuff. So, that's always a different experience. And so I've been missing that a little bit. And let's get back to it on Monday. I think it's been interesting coming back, seeing how rusty teams are, right, after a month away. And so, and also teams having to, having certain players in, maybe not out. Like Saliba might not be there because if he was in the final, he didn't play much. But I think there's a rule that FIFA where the player has to miss at least a week or something like that, so he may not be available. And the big thing I want to see is who trained this week, especially with Tomiyasu and Zinchenko, and then of course ESR as well. I want to see how they're progressing from their recovery, right? So, and those three things are really something to keep an eye on for this week in terms of player availability.
Yeah, absolutely. Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, fingers crossed, hopefully will be in contention for the game on Monday, is what I was told when I was at the ground on Saturday. They're hopeful that they'll be back. There wasn't definitive on those, but they're hopeful. Smith Rowe also expected to be back in January in terms of when we might see him training and getting involved more and more, but back in January, which is positive too. Lukonga had a slight impact injury on his foot, but it's not said to be serious at all, so he should also be back for Boxing Day if indeed we need him. And I think that was it. The only one that might still be missing, of course, is William Saliba, who is still coming back after his time with France at the World Cup, but maybe will still be in contention, or maybe even at least on the bench. Ramsdale, of course, came in nearly straight away, but he didn't really play too much, and he's a goalkeeper, so I suppose there is differences in the demands of those positions. The next kind of topic I wanted to talk about is the serious spate of injuries, Soph, that we've seen in the women's game. Beth Mead, of course, initially suffered a very serious ACL, and now Viv Miedema, has suffered one as well. I did enjoy Beth Mead's tweet that she put out. That was excellent. And yeah, I love just
brilliant.
It is brilliant. Like, it's just 3 weeks she had, being weighted on hand and foot, and now, she's going to have to try and do it for Viv instead, which is fantastic. What isn't fantastic is that they're both out. Do you think this is highlighting something about the women's game in particular? There's been discussions between journalists, between fans, suggesting that the expectation on the women's game in particular is too close to the expectation in the men's game. And I think that it is important to there are differences between the male and female biological bodies, and the strains and the stresses on what a biological male body can experience is going to be, you would imagine, and Raj can step in at any time and tell me I'm talking a lot of rubbish, but he's not going to be able to sustain the same amount of stress as, a biological female athlete. So do you think that these injuries are signs of problems that maybe we're not taking seriously enough?
So this is a great question and a very interesting subject. I'd like to preface my response by saying I've never been one of these women that feel like I can stand in a boxing ring and beat a man in a boxing match.
Yeah.
I will give it my best. I will step in the ring and I will give it a great fight, as you know, Mr. Canton. But likelihood
Make it sound like we've got a fight.
Likelihood is I am not winning, and that's okay. And that's part of like this men's versus women's thing, especially in football, that I don't get a lot. I will call someone out on a record, and I loved how Julian Laurens talked about Mbappe's record and Giroud's record beating Thierry Henry, and how he labeled it, for all teams. Goldstein and Bent were talking on TalkSport today about hat tricks in World Cups and the greatest hat trick. And can you really call it a hat trick if it's 120 minutes? And I'm like, well, the greatest hat trick ever scored in a World Cup final was Carly Lloyd in 2015 against Japan in the third, sixth, and 15 minute. The third one being an absolute wonder goal a la David Beckham. Those things just don't get lauded the same way, right? So if we park that aside, that we are different, and we are still trying to get to a point that men have been at for years and years and years. That comes to training, facilities. And as I was talking to Susie Rack from The Guardian just a couple months ago during the Women's Euros, and she was even talking about how as much as Arsenal have elevated stuff, Doc, especially with regards to training and facilities, there's still a long way to go in terms of the women's game, and how, they're taking care of turnkey. I think it's night and day compared to how it used to be. This is a concern for Arsenal Football Club, Tom, from the point of view of winning. These are two of the most important players, and we've lost them both to injury. And I'm really worried about, I don't know, the doc will tell me, should I be more worried about Beth's injury or Vivi's injury? Because with Miedema, that's really a concern. The good thing is they're both still young, but for the club and for the team and what we're going for this season, especially after we kind of overcame some adversity, that game against Manchester United in the WSL, We lost, yes, to Lyon, but we played a good game. We're still in through to the next round of the Champions League. But this is a massive loss. And I think because there's more games now and the games are more intense, they're televised, I think it adds a lot to all of it. There's more exhibition games now too, Tom, as well. So they've gone from playing maybe little 3 or 4 seasons ago to much more now. So it's definitely going to have an impact. The same as we're seeing in the men's game when they play too much football.
Yeah, so 2 questions, Doc, on this. I mean, first of all, the details that you understand about the 2 injuries in particular. And secondly, my question around those is how much does fatigue and, the continuous strain that's put on athletes' bodies by regular matches increase the chance of these specific types of injuries happening?
Yeah, well, so they're both the same. They're both ACL ruptures, from my understanding. I don't know if there's additional details given on if any other ligament has been injured or the meniscus has been injured either. So they're both similar injuries. You go in, have surgery, typically about a 9-month return. I look at the second season back to be a true indicator of return to pre-injury level. So there is certainly a process there, especially mentally. But in terms of your question to fatigue, it certainly plays a part, right? Whether it's physical fatigue or we call it neuromuscular fatigue, it plays a significant part. But I think to Sophie's point, the question isn't it's different than just pure fatigue. It's also more about how you're being trained. If your body has been trained to have more endurance, right? And you've been doing it for years and years on end, and you develop a more robust physical profile, then that allows you to become fatigued less easily, right? And unfortunately, when it comes to female footballers or female sports in general, that S&C side isn't emphasized as early, right? And it's not, and the individuals who are involved in that aren't typically the top of the sport, right? You can just look at that. I think there was a great article in The Athletic yesterday that said, S&C coaches within top flight football for the male side are 50 to 80K, whereas on the female side, it's 20 to 50K, right? So naturally, where are the top experts going to gravitate towards the men's side? And that leads to a lower level of care for the female side, right? And so then that leads to less robust physical side for females, right? Which all plays a part. And then I think even something I see on a youth development side is that it's not emphasized enough for girls to be in strength and conditioning early. Whereas even with young boys, it's not emphasized enough in general, but especially with females, it's not emphasized. And that could play a part why I think the highest ACL rupture rate is female footballers from the age of 14 to 18. And so it's a high rate in that regard. And there's multiple reasons for that. It's part of that fatigue. We know that there's some differences when it comes to hamstring to quad strength ratios. And so with females, quadricep strength tends to outweigh hamstring strength, whereas with males, it's the inverse. And the hamstring plays a key part in helping to prevent ACL injuries. So there are some physical deficits, but really, I think a lot of these things could be mitigated, but you need the proper processes in place from early on. And so for me, seeing the ACL ruptures at the elite level is more of a symptom of years and years of issues rather than just one thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Miedemar is, they've both played a lot of football. Miedemar has just been relied on so very much.
Yeah.
And
they extended her contract by a year, which is now going to be completely taken up by this injury. So I don't know how that will impact what happens contractually with Viv either. So that's a really
and there's always going to be that concern about how a player comes back, right? So no matter what, Doc, do women, and I'm going to ask stupid questions on this show along the way, and that's fine by me. I hope it's fine by the listeners. But do women respond and recover the same way as men when it comes to an ACL? Is it oranges and oranges? Is that the case for most injuries or no?
It depends. So I look at it, like I said before, there are some strength differences, right? Naturally, when it comes to males versus females. And so that's going to impact your recovery and how quickly you're able to return. especially when it comes to that hamstring quad ratio or other movement patterns as well. So that can impact it to an extent. It's hard to say how much, like it's all anecdotal. And so I honestly, to me, the biggest thing is a lot of times it's the type of player profile, right? Like if they're a winger, that's going to be a lot harder to come back from because they're relying a lot more on spontaneous change of direction, start stop, which puts a lot of stress on their body compared to say a goalkeeper or center back less so, but still, I think that's to me that's more of a key criteria than it is male versus female.
It's really interesting. I think I'm going to do some reading, Soph, on this.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can't believe this happened to them both. It's
Yeah, I
just
know.
It's just unreal.
On the morning show, I said it's like when Ozil and Alexis were our best two players. It's like us losing both of those to ACL. It's like from a men's kind of comparison for those that aren't that in tune with the women's game. That's kind of what we're talking about here. That's the level of damage that's been done to the team by losing these two. It's huge. And I was actually just checking on the WSL. In 2015, there were 8 teams in the WSL. In 2019, that jumped up to 12, which meant that you had significantly more games being played. And in 2021-22, the number of games played across the season in the WSL, not including Europe and Cup games, was 22. And you go back to 2015 and it was 14. So we've added 8 extra league games within that space of time, which is a significant number in such a small period.
Right.
So that extra strain is evident just by looking at the number of games being played there.
And Arsenal go deep into competitions, Tom,
Exactly.
you know, and that's another thing that adds layers to, you know, performances and wear and tear on the old body. I know we've got a deeper squad and we've got a better squad. There's no doubt about it. But sometimes, you know, a little bit like we're talking about with the men's losing Jesus, there's just something about that has a major significance versus other injuries. But these two together, that's hard. And Man United are better this season. You know, that was not a good game for us. Chelsea, you know, just 1 point, leading by 1 point in the WSL can make all the difference. Losing 2 players like that, that's hard.
Indeed. Doc's going to be shooting off very shortly. So before he does, I wanted to give Soph the opportunity to ask her question to the Doc, and then we'll be saying goodbye. So, Soph, shoot.
Yes, I love that we're getting this opportunity with the Doc at the end of the show. And I've been thinking about this from, I have friends. I was an athlete when I was in school, but not good enough to go on and play professional sports. I have a lot of friends who went semi and some who I know just through sports here, talking to players in MLS and whatever. Doc, you have patience, right? And athletes don't have patience. Do you see what I did there? If you know what I'm talking about. So when I'm thinking about Jesus and his road to recovery, and I'm seeing all these pictures of him walking around on his crutches and I know people say you should walk on a knee injury and laying down and doing stuff and exercises, whatever it is he's doing. And I'm thinking about Miedemar, but these are players who want to play. They're born winners. How do you manage the recovery process? Who's the boss of that? Is it the club doctor? Is it the player, his representatives? Because in the past, we've seen players rushed too early, rushed too soon, and maybe that was a club decision versus a player decision or their personal doctor decisions. How does that entire process work when you have an athlete who just wants to get back on the pitch? How do you manage that with your patients?
I mean, ideally, it's the physios who are leading that. It's going to be criteria-based return. So there's certain benchmarks that you want them to meet, and if they meet that, then they can progress, right? And so that's what it comes down to, really. Of course, as you get, you know, with certain players, if you're going to have other voices in, that's what it is at the elite level. And, you know, as you get closer, you're going to have conversation between yourself and the coaching staff and the player to understand, right, kind of all the risks. And when certain players, you might be more willing to take a chance, you might be less willing, right? And so there's so many variables. There's no cookie cutter approach to it. But ideally, it's the physios. It gets a little murky as you get closer to that return to play because, you know, the player's close, but you're not sure yet. They want to get back. And so that's where it can get a little harder in general. But I mean, honestly, a person being too motivated is far better than the opposite, not being motivated, right? I think it really just comes down to how much trust the player you've built with the player and the communication you have with them. And so a lot of that just becomes educational as well. I think a lot of that comes from the coaching staff as well, in terms of how they kind of make how they relate the importance of the medical personnel to the players, right? And so that's all part of the background kind of stuff that's going on. And so the way I see it at Arsenal, from my understanding with how it is with Arteta, is that he allows the medical staff to be very, very independent. And so he doesn't get involved in those decisions. It's coming from them. And so I think that's something that we see with him throughout his tenure, whether it's medical, whether it's other aspects of the club, is that he allows other experts to be experts. And so I think, yeah, to answer your question, it's hard to say in my case. Go ahead.
Doc, when it comes to the end, like you said, because I think that's the kind of the tricky part. And you're my doctor and I'm the athlete and I'm like, I'm ready. This is the race. This is the race I've been waiting for. This is the final I've been waiting for. I'm playing. And you're saying you shouldn't play. That's the conversation I'm really most interested in. At that point, does the player, if he has that kind of caliber, that type of influence, does he get that final nod in that moment?
I don't know if it's that adversarial, right? If you have a good relationship with the player, it should never get to that point of being adversarial, because you've been with them now for whoever knows how many months or years. And so they should understand the risk and reward of that. And in the end, that's what it really comes down to, is the risk and reward. You're going to give your say, the player's going to have their say, the manager will have their say. But also, as a physio at the top level, you have to understand that it's not like your normal environment. Players want to play, coaches want the players to play, you want the players to play. And so there's going to be a little more acceptable level of risk, especially as it comes to these big games. That's just what it is. And so now, if it's someone who's coming out there and they can't go, and it's a super high red flag, in that case, of course they can't play, right? But if let's say if it's a 50-50 and it was a normal kind of like mid-November game, they likely wouldn't play. Now you're talking about Champions League or a game, let's say, versus the top club, that has drastic ramifications. Then there's a little bit more acceptable risk. And I think understanding that and that mentality is really, you have to understand that it's not, medical side is not just black and white. There's so many different factors that come into it. And for me, that's what makes it fun.
A massive thank you to Raj, of course, who's shot off now. You can find him at 3CB Performance on Twitter, and he'll be back, of course, after Christmas for our next podcast as well. The world of physiotherapy. So if you have to shoot off at a moment's notice.
I mean, he was out of there. And I adore him. And he just,
great.
By the way, I want to steal the sweater he was wearing today. Sweater weather.
Indeed, yes. Very sweater weather.
Now you have to Google sweater weather skit Saturday Night Live. It's hilarious.
I'm adding it to my list.
Yeah, Amy Poehler, she will not disappoint. Yeah, add it.
No, I know she doesn't. I've seen some of her stuff. It's hilarious. So obviously, kind of bringing an end to that part of the conversation around the injuries and stuff as well. What I've done is I've finally got off my backside, which has been a challenge during this snowy period, and set us up a Strava club. For those that aren't familiar with Strava, trust me, it's easy. I'm really not good with this stuff, and I managed to work it out within the space of a day. It's basically like an app, like your typical running apps or exercise apps. It records, it tracks, what you're doing or the exercise that you're doing. And what we want to do is invite you to join what is becoming the Eat, Sleep, Arsenal Repeats community, by going to what I believe, I need to get this right, www.strava.com/clubs/ESARP, which is Eat, Sleep, Arsenal, Repeat podcast in acronym form. So ESARP, ARP at the end of that. I'll make sure to leave a link down in today's video description. Hopefully, my little minions, Sophie, Raj, and Owen would have all signed up as well by this point, and you'll see us all on there. I have noticed that on Strava, I've started to be found by people already. Like people are typing in my name and adding me and seeing how little exercise I'm doing. It's all very self-conscious. It is going to definitely force me to do more stuff, because I know people are going to be going, oh, Tom's not done his mile run today, and I'm going to get that in the morning show. So, yes, you'll be able to find us at strava.com/clubs/ESARP is where you can find that. Sophie, I'm
excited about that
kind of thing. Yeah, I am excited to see what kind of community we build. I'm also going to get this might not be there by the time this goes up. It might be. I've not decided if I've got the time to do it tomorrow morning before we upload it, because I've got to do some editing for this podcast. But I want to make a Spotify playlist that people can listen to what I listen to when I'm running. And of course, there'll be like a TC playlist. There'll be a Sophie playlist, fingers crossed. There'll be a Raj playlist and an Owen playlist, which I'm very scared about what Owen listens to be honest. I'm concerned.
I love this. I absolutely love this, because I have a feel. I love seeing other people's playlists and music. I'm one of those awful people that really don't make playlists, and I just put my favorite songs on repeat.
Yeah.
And I may live in the past when it comes to the music. Like my new music may have ended at either the 1979, somewhere there or thereabouts.
Yeah.
So this is going to be great. I love the playlist, by the way.
Yeah. To be honest, playlists for me are like, I have too many of them. I don't like, my Spotify is just filled with random playlists from like 7 years ago that I barely use anymore. Do you have that where you you've made lots of different ones? Do you know what I mean?
You actually think like if you ever kick the bucket and someone saw your playlists.
I have playlists with one song in, like, because I've just started a playlist and never finished it. Like, I don't know why that happened. I think I've got ones like, if I genuinely go onto my Spotify now, I'll have one that's like drum and bass chill music, where I've gone on to like try and come up with like all the drum and bass chill songs I listen to, and there'll be like one song in that playlist. I'm serious, it's ridiculous.
It's so funny, Tom, because I love a bit of pop every now and again, but I can't listen to like an entire, Take That album. I just want one song. And I do the same. So I've got all these open playlists where I've put, it's like my dance music or my 90s music or whatever. And there's literally one song in it. And I'm like, maybe I should just amalgamate these songs and create some type of playlist.
This is the sign of a genuine psychopath. I have a playlist called The Top 5, which is clearly where I've gone to make like my top 5 favorite songs. It has 4 songs in it. It doesn't even have 5 songs. That's the level of psychopath we're talking about. That's ridiculous. Anyway, so I am actually going to try and commit to making my own running playlist full of what will probably be loads of drum, which is very motivating, to be fair, very energetic, and it's good to run and work out to. I'm going to be on the guys to get theirs done if they want to. I'm not going to force them, but if they would like to.
I like having homework. When do we need to have this ready by?
Well, I mean, I can add the link to the video at any point. I'm going to try and get mine on for tomorrow's upload at midday, but I doubt you'll have time.
Right.
I mean, you may have time. I don't know how little your life is.
Maybe I could do. Well, I have no live show day. I'm preparing for my 3-year anniversary special on Mikel Arteta.
Wow, nice.
Tomorrow.
I watched Harry's earlier. It was very good.
Yeah, so, it will start off really rough for me, having not been on board. But it started off rough for Mikel as well, didn't it? So, now we're here.
It did.
But yeah, so
the words "rocky start" were in the headline. So yeah,
and I'm guaranteeing a rocky song in my workout playlist.
I'm loving these segues. They're great.
I mean, I could just put the Rocky 4 album in there. Do you know what I mean? But I'm not. I'm going to get some tunes to you by the end. When you're listening to this, people, you will know what my 5. I'm going to pick 5.
Okay, 5 songs.
5 songs.
Okay, I was like, my playlist, I'm going to try and get 100.
Jeez.
I'm not expecting you to do that.
Listen, this Generation X, I can't keep up with you kids these days. Seriously, I need a nap.
The great things about them is that if you think of a song, you can just add it to that playlist and it will just update. It will continue to update. And if people go back to it and the playlist that I put in for today's podcast may not be the same as it is in next week's podcast because I'm just going to keep adding songs.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, right now, all I can hear is "There's No Easy Way Out" from Rocky IV. Like that's when he's driving the car and stuff like that. So
I think that if someone listens to your playlists while they're running, like the way to one end of their run, and then listens to one on the way back, they're going to think, how on earth have these two people come together to talk unanimously about one subject? Because the taste is going to be so far apart. It's going to be ridiculous.
Tom, when I was growing up and we were on holiday, right, I had my Walkman. I don't know if you ever had a Walkman.
I had a Sony Ericsson.
Did you have a CD? Was it a CD at the time or was it a tape?
So the first, I had like a CD. It was like a big disc, like where the CD would go in and I would flip up. Like, yes. I mean, if we got really young listeners, that even now I'm going to start looking old at this point. But yeah.
Right. So the rule was when you were sunbathing, because we didn't really work out back then, us folks. When you were sunbathing, you had to one side of the tape, then you flip it. That was before the Walkman could actually just flip it for you automatically. Flip it. So with the playlist, do you have a going out and a coming back playlist? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Or is it just one loop? Do you have like a final 20 minutes?
I might change the playlist I'm listening to partway through. I might be like, because my head might be banging a bit by that halfway point. So I'm like, I don't really need the drum and bass really banging in my head on the way back. So I'm going to listen to something more chill, So no, I don't typically change, but that's not like halfway point. But yeah, that's a good metaphor for it though, like the tape being turned over. I'm gonna. Yeah, it works. It works. So this was a really long way of us saying that we're going to have Spotify playlists in the description. The good thing is we won't have to talk about this great in such detail next time, but I think you might appreciate the background stories behind it. So yes, www.strava.com/clubs/ESARP is where you can come and join the Eat, Sleep, Arsenal, Repeat community club, which of course you'll be able to see all of our exercises and all of yours. Well, of course, I think I'm going to look more into it, but you can do like events and stuff. So it might be that we have time to do like a run wherever we are in the world at the same time. That might be pretty cool. So that might be. Obviously, it will have to work. Time differences was going to have to be strange, but
that would be epic.
Yeah, we're gonna and maybe we can do like if we can get 49 miles collectively. Do you know what I mean? So everyone runs
if people can get up at 3 a.m. in the morning to watch a World Cup random, first round match, they can get up and run with
us. Absolutely. We're going to look into doing more of this. And of course, you've left some really cool ideas and stuff in comment sections of the previous shows. So, and I'm reading through plenty of those. So if you read through the comments as well, thank you for leading all the feedback on these shows. Owen, hopefully, will be back with us in the new year when his work has calmed down significantly. And of course, we'll be welcoming back Dr. Raj for the next show as well. When that next show will be, we're not 100% sure because, of course, next week is Christmas and a lot of chaos goes on with families and stuff around then. But we will update you on the socials, and of course I'll be updating you on the 8 a.m. morning shows when those will be as well. Sophie, thank you so much for your time as always.
As always, it is a pleasure to hang out with you, Mr. Canton. Hey, sneaky got to 41k I saw today,
we did 41,000 subs, not bad. It's
very nice.
It's still crazy. The aim is if we can get to 50 by the summer, then we're going to try and do a live show in London. That is the aim to celebrate that 50k. So if you're not subbed, please sub. I was looking at the analytics earlier on. Apparently 35% of the people that watch the show aren't subscribed. What the hell? Like, why aren't you subscribed?
Whoa, that takes you to 50 before the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. What is 41,000 with 35% of it added on? I mean, this is testing my A-level maths.
Boy.
I did A-level maths.
My weakest subject. I used to be in Mr. Waller's maths group, top of the shelf.
Mr. Waller.
Got to the fourth year in secondary school and just got distracted. my
So
things.
if we have 41,000, I bet you never thought we were doing maths live on a
No.
podcast.
And I love you because you do all this crazy shit all the time. Go on.
If you have 41,000 subscribers and you want to do 35% of it, so that's times 0.35, so that's 14,350. So if the 35% that listen to this that aren't subscribed, we hit
Tonight.
that 50,000. Yeah, I mean it's not going to happen, but you know it would theoretically get us there. So make sure you check. And also, if you are subscribed to this, you're only 50% of the job done because the other 50% is making sure you're subscribed to the Highbury Squad as well. So do make sure you go over and subscribe to the Highbury Squad because you're only 50% doing your job if you are indeed just subscribed here. So thanks for your time as always. We will see. Of course, you can find Raj on Twitter at 3CB Performance. You can find Owen as well. I'm promoting, even though he's not here. That is free promotion if you've ever heard it. Owen Young on Twitter. And of course, I'll be back tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. with the next show. And of course, the next Eat, Sleep, Arsenal Repeat will keep you updated as to when that will be around Christmas. Join up to our Strava club and start tuning into some of our Spotify tunes if you're into hardcore drum and bass. We will see you again. Yeah, indeed. Or share. There's going to be lots of variety. See you soon, guys. Have a good one. And as always, up the arse.